What's up guys, I'm Shane and this is Spare Change. Here on the channel, we discuss all things audio and video, like new movies and new AV equipment. So if it's your first time here, consider tapping that subscribe button for new weekly videos. Today, we'll be checking out 1989's Back to the Future 2 on 4K Blu-ray. I'm not going to review the movie itself, I'm just going to share with you some of my thoughts on the video and the audio quality. Now, let's go over a few tech specs. The movie was shot on 35mm. It's got a 4K DI. It's rated PG. Runtime is 108 minutes. Aspect ratio is 185:1. Therefore, you'll get a nice full screen image. This review is probably going to sound a lot like the first one. Like part 1, this is a nice upgrade over the regular standard Blu-ray. The higher bitrate of 4K over 1080p makes the image more stable and consistent. Edges are cleaner and sharper, and the finer details are much more visible. If you look at the texture on Marty's jacket when he's talking to Frodo, you can count every little red square on it. The background scenery is more resolved as well. The grass is more defined, and you'll be able to make out all the details on the buildings. Close-ups are equally as good. Now you can see just how much makeup is on Doc Brown's face and where his real skin color starts on his neck. I think there is some light noise reduction being applied here, because you can see the occasional smoothed over face and backgrounds. But like the first movie, I didn't think it was at all distracting. You will notice some softer shots here when the actor is playing two different parts, since they've got to blend the two shots together.
Shut up!
And those flying cars still don't look real. HDR is subtle, but it's used to give the overall brightness a nice boost. Outdoor daytime shots are the standouts here, and where you'll see most of the detail and color. The nighttime shots, like the first movie, have good black levels, but some shadow detail can get lost in the darkest areas. Specular highlights are seen throughout, from neon lights, reflective surfaces, and electricity, so there is some good pop here and there.
What the hell is going on here?
Audio gets a new Dolby Atmos mix, and it's similar to the first movie. Most of the action remains in the lower channels, while the musical score extends to the height speakers. The movie is sonically more dynamic, and the soundstage is even bigger than part 1. Most of the surround effects are fixed, with the only time they dynamically move is during the storm while the guys are at Doc Brown's house. You'll hear the rain move from front to back in the height channels. Actually, no. There is some movement when the DeLorean takes off at the beginning of the movie. It flies from the lower channels to the height channels, and you'll hear some of the cars move through different channels when they're on the Skyway. Bass response is mostly light, but it does kick in when the DeLorean comes back to the future. Dialogue was always fine and easy to hear, with no issues. So for audio, I'm gonna go with an 8.2. Some of the effects do sound their age, but the music does sound really good, and much better than it was on the regular Blu-ray. The new Atmos remix gives the movie better immersion, especially now that you can hear the flying cars move above your head. This is a fun mix, and it sounds like a natural extension to the movie. For video, I'm gonna go with an 8.1. I still think shadow detail isn't always the greatest, but the extra detail and resolution during the daytime shots are an excellent upgrade over the regular Blu-ray. I think if you're a fan of Back to the Future, then this is a definite must-own. The picture looks great, and the Atmos mix makes it a worthy purchase. Okay, we're just gonna go straight to part 3. Let's go over a few tech specs. The movie was shot on 35mm. It's got a 4K DI. It's rated PG. Runtime is 118 minutes. Aspect ratio is 185:1. So, full screen. Now this movie, as far as I know, was shot at the same time as part 2, so they should look exactly the same. And I kind of think they do for the most part. There were more darker scenes in part 2, whereas in part 3, a lot of it happens outside during the day. So, with HDR, those outdoor scenes are nice and bright. The color does, however, look warmer here coming from the standard Blu-ray. And like the other movies, there isn't going to be a lot of crazy vivid colors, just a lot of earthy tones, since this happens back in the West. Black levels and shadow details are on par with the other movies, where you'll see things like dark jackets blend into the darkness, so there is some detail being lost, though it still does look better than the standard Blu-ray. And there are some nice specular highlights from lights, reflective surfaces, and the time machine. Detail-wise, everything is much better through and through. The gravel on the road, the grass and trees, and the interiors have better resolvable textures and details. Even the cotton and wool costumes get a nice upgrade in resolution. As for any noise reduction, I feel there may be a very light pass because I can see some occasional smoothness. And if you hate film grain, the grain is super light here and in part 2. The only time you'll notice grain is going to be in the darker scenes, Anything that happens during the day is very clean. You might even think that some of those shots could pass for a modern day movie.
Great Scott. I know, this is heavy.
Audio is in Dolby Atmos, and I gotta say, it sounds pretty much like the other movies. Height channels kick into high gear when Marty runs into the Indians, with some dynamic overhead movement when the horses jump into the foreground. Saving Clara from going over the ravine has some good lower channel panning and good overhead extension. And the soundstage is the biggest of the three movies. The musical score is again the best part of this mix, and I never felt the movie sounded like a fake forced Atmos remix. It sounded natural throughout. Oh, and as far as bass response, there really wasn't much happening there. There's a little during the action parts, but nothing that's going to make your subwoofers work. So for audio, I'm going to go with an 8.2. I think it's very similar to the other movies, in that it has good overhead activity when called for, with a nicely wide soundstage. It is thin sounding since there isn't much bass, but vocal clarity was good, and there are some good discrete effects. For video, I'm going to go with an 8.3. It's a very noticeable upgrade, and it's got a really clean, mostly grain-free image. It is tighter and more refined than the regular Blu-ray, and it's got some excellent fine detail. Actually, all three movies have excellent detail. Now the question is, should you get this new set if you already own the previous versions? Well, if you're a fan, then yes, I think this set is a must-own. They've got great Atmos remixes, and they are the best they've ever looked. Well, those are my thoughts on the entire trilogy. If you guys have seen it, then tell me which one you like the best. Plus, who got their sets for $10? Leave a comment and let us know. Now, if you want to grab the trilogy, I'll leave some links for it down below in the video's description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video if you found it useful, and if you're not a subscriber, then tap the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys again in the next one.